Hello, Chef Eric here with Steak Ager. I am very excited to be making another Steak Ager video after a sabbatical with some house renovations and a new Steak Ager set, which you see behind me. It's actually my personal kitchen, but it is also the Steak Ager set. So I'm really excited to bring you into my home and to do some videos for you. I also want to welcome all the new members of the Facebook family page. That is the Steak Ager Facebook family page. And all the new owners of Steak Ager. I know that it is some uncharted territory for a lot of people. On the family page, we have a lot of veteran guys with a lot of great information. So I encourage you, if you aren't a member of that page, to go look for it on Facebook and ask questions. Go to the file section and see what other equipment that the Steak Ager family loves, and get to know some of the guys there that have been using their Steak Ager for quite a while now, with much success, I should add. So today, I am getting back in the aging game again after not aging for a little bit, and we are going to do a prime ribeye bone-in that I picked up the other day from a butcher who I have forged a relationship with. Told him exactly what I want, and any butcher would be happy to talk shop with you. So tell them exactly what you want. And he got it in for me. And what I have today is a certified Angus beef prime bone-in ribeye. It is known in the butcher world as a 109. And once I break it out of the refrigerator, I'll show you exactly what that is. So without further ado, actually, we're going to get right to the refrigerator, and I'm going to bring that meat out. Here it is. This is quite large. It is a 14.5 pound ribeye. I haven't even broken it open to see exactly what it is. I figured I would do it with you. So let's get started. First, I am going to wear some gloves because, you know, it's real important to work clean when we're putting the meat into our Steak Ager to reduce any risk of cross-contamination. So I encourage you to get some gloves, work very clean, at least have washed hands when you do it. So I'm going to open this up, and let's get a look at this for the first time. Sharp knives are really important. You'll hurt yourself with a dull knife, but not so much a sharp one. You'll still get hurt if you're not careful, but this one is really sharp. I'm using a regular boning knife here. So this is exactly how you're going to get it, most likely, unless you're getting a hanging beef which has never been put into cryovac. A little harder to find it that way. In some areas of the U.S. you might be able to, but here in New Jersey it's a little more difficult. So I'm going to lay some paper towel down on my board. Again, working clean. Reduce the risk of cross-contamination, like that. And this goes in the trash. So I'm going to take this time right now to just give a shout out to Scott Coburn and Frank Rizzo, the masterminds behind the Steak Ager. Thank them again, as always, for their insight in bringing this type of product to market. It is definitely one of the greatest culinary appliances that I have bought, and I know that a lot of people feel the same way. So before I continue, I want to explain the 109. You'll see that it has netting on it. You can really see it on this side. Okay. The reason why the 109 has netting on it is because this fat cap is actually separated from the meat So it will lift up, but it is still attached on this end. So you can lift that whole fat cap off. This is extra fat, is not what we typically know as a fat cap, because once you lift this off, there's a fat cap underneath it. So in order for it to stay in place, the slaughterhouses will put netting on it. But I'm going to go ahead and take the netting off and show you exactly what I'm talking about. This looks really beautiful. A little bit embedded in the fat here, but we'll pull it off. A couple more paper towels and then we'll dry off the bone side to make working with it easy. Okay, so the other elements of the 109 is that it still has these are called feather bones. You're not going to really find that on a roast that you get in your supermarket or even most butchers, because most butchers are going to make this what they call oven ready. So they're going to remove these bones. And on a lot of ribeyes that we get with the bone in, almost most of them, you have the end of the bones here, but you also have these round bones. I'm going to keep them in while I dry age. But a lot of butchers will remove that just to make it easier for folks to carve once the roast is ready. They make an assumption that most people are just going to buy a piece and roast it in the oven. So we're doing something different. That's why it's important you ask your butcher for exactly what you want. So what I like to do is square off the roast. So I find where my bones are, and I'm going to go ahead and do that, which will require me to remove this round bone that's on the end. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Cut just around it. These bones are kind of in the shape of a cone. It's a little bit easier to take this end one out because you have the end, and you just kind of got to feel around. Just like that, and work slowly and carefully. There's no rush. And get underneath it and cut it out. A little connective tissue underneath, you want to cut right through it. Again, this is why sharp knives are important. Round bone goes in the trash. Okay. So now, I'm going to show you here is a little meat on the left of the bone. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that off, going right next to the bone, just because I want to square it off. So I go to this point here and cut it off. And this is going to be my first look at the marbling of this beautiful piece of meat. So that's what we have. Looks mighty fine to me. This I will either save and grind, or maybe cook it to get an initial taste of what it tastes like. That's awesome. So that is squared off. This side is this is the chuck end. So you got a little more connective tissue in this end. I don't know if you can see it there. So whenever I size a roast to fit in my steak ager, I'm cutting from this end because I don't want to mess with this side that has the beautiful refined eye and some of the spinalis over there. So in order for me to do that, I have to take these feather bones off of this side. You can't cut through them unless you have a bandsaw, which I don't have. So these come off, they're very thin, they're very close to the meat, and you just got to feel it with your knife and cut around them. Take it off. That I'll save for stock. I think I'm going to take one more off. So we're going to get right to the meat. So I am using what is known in butcher language as a 109. You're not going to get a 109 at your supermarket. You're going to get it from a butcher or a farmer that is doing his own cows. So there are some aspects to this that make it a little bit more complicated. I want to encourage you to not hesitate to go out to your supermarket and get that bone-in or a boneless ribeye choice, or prime, is preferred by me, and get it in your steak ager and do that first run for 30, 35, 40 days, depending on the size, and get yourself into the game, because you're going to be using this for a long time. So get that first one under, ask as many questions as you need to on the Steak Ager family group. We have a lot of veteran guys that are willing to help and answer your questions. And you'll see me on there too. So I will answer your questions as they arise. So again, welcome everybody. So the thing about this 109A that differs a little bit from a supermarket roast is this fat cap. You can see it's quite substantial. Got a lot of fat on there. We want a fat cap. We want it really deep because that's what's going to protect your meat from the dry aging process. So the 109A actually has a fat cap, and I'm not going to lift it all the way off, but you can see it is actually separated like that. So it will come all the way off, and it's hinged over here. So I'm just going to make sure that that is laying quite flat. I was contemplating tying it on with string, but you know what? I think I'm going to be fine without it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you both ends of this roast. Lovely. You have the chuck end, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but there's a lot more connective tissue. The eye isn't as refined, or defined, I should say. And so this is always the end that I'm going to cut off of when I go to fit it for my steak ager. If I flip it around to this end, there's the ribeye that we all kind of know and love. That defined eye, as you get farther in the meat, that spinalis, that cut of meat that goes around, it's really the cap of the ribeye, gets more defined. So I want to start from here and cut off from the other end. Bone-ins are a little bit more tricky than a boneless, obviously, because you got the bones. Bone-in ribeyes usually have these round bones, which butchers will quite often take off, so it's easier for you to slice at the end. So I like to keep the bones in there. It further protects the meat. And also, since this is a 109, and you won't find this typically in a supermarket roast, but these are called the feather bones, long, thin bones. I keep that on because, again, it's going to protect the meat. So, and I will dispatch those at the end of the aging process. So I typically like to square my roast off so it'll fit, and I am going to use the rack from the steak ager as a template. So I want to mark it, and I'm just going to come within the confines of the border of the rack. So I'm going to flip this over because I do it this way. And I'm going to hold it up here, make sure that the edges are within. And I'm going to use my knife, and I'm just going to mark right inside, both sides. So, just like that. And I'm going to take my very sharp knife, and I'm going to connect the dots, basically. And I want to try and cut as straight as possible to get a nice clean edge. Okay, so once I mark it, I'm going to flip it over, and I have removed the feather bone here so it doesn't get in the way. Hopefully this one won't get in the way. And I'm going to feel for my bones, and I'm going to cut just to the right of that bone there. Again, trying to cut as straight as possible and looking for my marks. And nice long knife cuts. Don't worry about cutting through it in one shot. Using a sharp knife, very important. And here we're going to get our first glimpse at the marbling of this beautiful Certified Angus Prime 109. So that looks really phenomenal to me. And again, this is that end closer to the chuck. So you've got some of this here, which the farther you go this way, the less of that there is. And then you can see that extreme fat cap that I told you is lifted off, yet it's still connected. So this is typically the fat cap that you get for a ribeye. So I'm going to play with this piece later, probably make it for dinner perhaps. I usually like to take a piece and cut it and then freeze it after I vacuum seal it to do a side-by-side comparison. So this is what we have. It looks lovely. I'm going to trim this side just a little bit more because I think I need it flatter. Trim it up, not too much. And here I am ready. Now, again, this fat cap I am looking at. And I'm trying to make the decision whether I tie it or not. So what's great about the feather bones on this, that it'll keep the shape pretty well. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to not tie it, and I'll tie it before I cook it. I'm planning on doing this for Thanksgiving. We're going to do a whole roast. So typically I'll dry age and cut into steaks, but this time I am doing it just for a roast, and that's why I went out and searched out this with the extra fat. You know, I wanted something really special. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the rack. That fits great. I have to do a little bit of trimming. A little bit more off of this side. I'm going to err on the side of caution so I don't have to do it later when I bring it to the steak ager. So I'm going to cut a little bit more off of this. Get a little more comfort zone here. Alright. Right at the bone. Took a little bit more off again, grind it, cook it, taste it, and I think I'm good to go. So I'm going to meet you at the steak ager, and we'll put this thing in and we'll get her started.